Okay, so we are in the chapter on Pilul. Pilul is one of the 10 lashonos, 10 languages, the expressions that are used for tefillah, for prayer in the Medrash, the Yalkut Shimoni, the premise of the Sefer. And over here, we're talking about the language of tefillah, meaning mishpat. There were two understandings of tefillah. One of them means to judge. Amnam im nivayer tefillah miloshen mishpat. Let's understand that the word tefillah means mishpat. Judgment. Hugam can be or niflak al klalot inyan tefillah. That it also provides for us a wonderful approach to understanding prayer. Hu she'inyan hatefillah hu lishpot ha'emes mashi emes lamis. Because when you're engaged in prayer, what are we doing? We're really judging prayer based on what it is at its truth. We're judging what truth is. V'hinei yesh emes be'etzem v'yesh emes be'mikra. When we say in the end of the Shema, Hashem Elokim Emes, that God is the truth, that there are many things that appear to be truth, but, and we talk about now, the postmodernist dictum is that everybody has their own truth. Everybody believes that their own version of reality is their own truth. But the only one who has a monopoly over what truth is the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That everything that is found in the world, it seems to many that everything that happens seems to be random chaos. You look at the way people describe the last year and a half of their lives. It's all chaos. It's all, we'll do a do-over as if it wasn't intentional. Let's repeat a year. Let's repeat this. Let's try it again. Let's start over. Let's cancel this. The fact that you can speak about an institution, an idea, a concept, or a period of time as if it was something that were simply dispensable or disposable, that means that you believe in the notion of mikra. You believe that things are random, that things are spinning out of control. There's no one behind the steering wheel. And the reality is that the only truth, the only one who has a hold over truth, over reality is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why his signature, the Gemara tells us, is emes, that when the rabbis tried to defeat the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, at that moment when they defeated this creature in the shape of a lion, a petek falls down from heaven and it has the signature emes. Emet means truth, but it also is the signature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's also the balance of the osios in the Torah. So you have Aleph is the first letter in the Aleph base, Tav is the last letter in the Aleph base, Mem is in the middle, represents balance, right? That's how you know Fox News is the emes. It's fair and balanced because it's in the middle, right? That's how you know emes is truth. So anyway, so the idea is that anything that has any spin on it whatsoever, no matter where it's coming from, whether you are more noted to hear it or less noted to hear it, that ultimately is not the truth. But what the truth is, it only belongs to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, when you're dealing with something that is definitional of truth, it is impossible that it doesn't exist. It is mukhrach, means it must be. Everything else in the world doesn't have to be, or that humbling notion that the world will go on without it. But when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is the only thing that must be. Right? He is the only thing that must be. Every possession you have and every person, and even ourselves, ultimately we are either replaceable or temporary, and we have our impact in this world and we have our role. But the only element that exists forever, that would be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zelashon HaRambam. Excuse me. This is the language of the Rambam. That if you were to think for a second that ein kol hanimtzaim milvado mitzuyim hu levado yehe matzui lo yivato hu liftulam shekol hanimtzaim tzrichin lo hu baruch hu. This is a philosophical concept that if the only thing that really existed, if the only source of real existence was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then everything else continues to exist. God doesn't need us, we need him. Therefore, our truth and our reality is not like God's truth. And so if we think that we are the center of our world, right, the center of our universe, then ultimately we exist as an independent entity, then ultimately we don't really exist, right? That's why we said that one who has hubris, one who is full of themselves, arrogant, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that person in the world. But if you're fixated on the truth of Kadosh Baruch Hu, the reality of Hashem, being the center and the being and the beer of the world, the one who causes everything to come into existence, then ultimately there is room for others to exist. That's the paradox. There is no existence of truth other than God. So this is just to backtrack a second. We had mentioned that the Mishnah in Avos says that one who pursues their own kavod, one who pursues their own self-aggrandizement, their own reputation, their own name, ultimately it will evade them and they will get nothing. But if you pursue the kavod of others, and even more so, if you pursue the kavod of Hashem, that's where we start to exist at that moment, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu in His greatness made room for us to exist. And we only exist as part of His benevolence, as part of His creation. Now we go back to what is judgment. If you want to judge what is truth, not to understand the truth about a certain topic, right? You're going to debate global warming. You're going to see what's the truth behind this. Now the question is, you want to understand the truth, not of a topic, but truth, the definition of truth. To understand what is the truth behind all of existence. If you come to judges, you're going to see right away that you're standing before God. If you peel back the layers, right? Normally, if there's something that is not nonsense, you peel back the layers, it's like an onion. The onion is the quintessential klipa of Ra, because every time you peel back a layer, all you find is more onion. And you go back in the end, you find nothing. But when you peel back the layers in something that has tochen, in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then ultimately behind the layer of the layer, you will find the source of all existence. I think it was Chaim Volozhiner pointed out that when one studies science, one studies even healthy philosophy, and one studies math and whatnot, the secrets to which Kadosh Baruch Hu buried in the world, what you find behind all of that, right? Any kernel of truth, anything, you'll find a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And God buried truth in many layers of reality. But the more you investigate, the more you understand, the deeper you get, the more you come in contact with God. And that's mishpat is the search for truth. When you are judging a case, your job is to adjudicate, to find out which side is really with the truth and which one's lying. And that's what a judge does. So my kibiyachol echut emes zu, and he's kind of like waxing poetic, waxing philosophical here. But I think we'll get back to tefillah in a few moments. What is kibiyachol echut emes zu? What is the worth? Echut is the value of. Kamot is the quantity. Kamot and echut. What is the value of this truth? Gadol gibor v'nora ad ein tachlis. He is great. He is mighty, glorious, with no limit. This is the truth that surrounds all reality. When you try to continue to investigate this truth, right away you're going to be filled with praise, to glorify, to exalt, to praise, to honor. Because part of the action that is the outgrowth, that is the expression of the discovery of truth, that is that nothing is really separate from God. Right? When you realize you're part of a system that's greater than you, that's joy, by the way. That's what leads us to praise. You know what leads people to sadness, to depression? It's the notion that you don't exist with a purpose. Is that you're wandering and you're useless, and that every creation you have and every idea you give and every speech you've ever delivered and everything, and nobody really cares, right? And that idea is frightening. So when we realize that, wait a minute, I'm not here for any purpose, it causes depression. It causes to feel like we exist for however number of years with a miserable life with all sorts of problems. And then why am I even doing this? And that's why people get sad, because they don't feel connected to any greater truth, to any greater reality. But if you have your heart set on if you're engaged in mishpat, if your goal is to uncover a Kadosh Baruch Hu's role in the world, then ultimately, the more you peel back layers, the more you see your chelak in that reality, and that brings joy. that brings great simcha. So shehu yisparach mehulam mishtash yisparach mikoch ein sof yoto yisparach, and then of course you'll erupt in praise because you have meaning now and you have purpose. Olamot haniflaim, the wonderful worlds that God created, shabar l'rivei riboseim leprateim haniflaim mit umitchonat hitbonenut. V'amito yisparach be'echrach yimale libo b'shirot yishpachot, and your heart will suddenly be filled with songs and praise. Kishiasig ma'em esasos, when you start to understand this truth. So when someone discovers how the pieces all come together, you know the joy you feel when you're reading a mystery or some or watching a movie, and all of a sudden the storyline comes together and you're like, now I understand. Why is it that brings you, it's not just closure, but it brings you joy because you understand that things connect, that there was a point to something. I forgot what it is, but in cinema there's a word for something that's thrown in there that doesn't really have a point, but other than to just if you guys know what I'm talking about, there's a phrase that there's a term for something that's just thrown in there, but it's not there to bring you to any conclusion. Anyway, but that doesn't. People criticize those plot lines and those elements in movies because they don't tie back in. We experience joy when things come together, when purpose is realized. So Viktor Frankl's famous ha'ara that he had when he discusses the pain that he had endured in the hands of the Nazis, as they tortured him terribly. And he withstood that. And he said the one thought that rang in his mind, his heart, that kept him alive was the idea that they cannot conquer his, they can't conquer his thoughts, his inner thoughts. And that was part of what he formalized, of what he formulated as his search for meaning. That the greatest joy we have in this world is our ability to find purpose, to tie us into something greater than ourselves, to know that we're not just independent. We're not, no matter who you are, no matter how alone you feel, right? To know that you're part of a greater story, I think is the source of great joy for a lot of people. And when you continue in your investigation of the truth, to find what is really behind, what's the fuel and the engine behind all of the creatures that God created, all of the reality created. I just read a story. There was a story in one of in the most recent New Yorker here about an entomologist. One second. Show and tell. Just 1 second. I'll grab the article here. So it has the story of a famous entomologist he dedicated his life to studying bugs, which sounds like a very strange thing to give yourself up to. Why would I want to do that? The truth is, he was an expert as a young kid, he had took an interest in aquatic life. And one of these fish, something he picked up, had thorns, and it stung him in the eye, and it affected his vision terribly. And he found that he was only able to see up close. So already as a young age, maybe 10, 12 years old, he started to stare at things that required really no glasses on and really up close vision. That was bugs. And he became the greatest authority on bugs in the world because of his injury, right? And I remember reading about this guy in a book a couple of years ago. And the idea was that he spoke about was that finding your purpose through the accident and through the things that you thought damaged you and ruined your vision. But he found his life's mission in bugs, all because of this injury to his eyes. It may have been 2 issues ago. I don't remember where it is now. I can't find it. But the idea is, here we go. His name was Ed Wilson, 1942. Ed Wilson had pulled on a fish that he caught, and the needle-like spine lodged into his right eye. The lens had to be removed, and following the surgery, to see something clearly, he needed to hold it up near to his face. So the only thing that now he could study carefully were insects, because insects require close-up investigation. So he was by his summer home in Mobile, Alabama, the famous home of the Million Man song by Shlock Rock, and he started to discover different species. He decided he's going to study all the ants that walk around there, and he is the one who discovered this this one kind of red ant, fire ant, that were imported from in cargo that had been unloaded in Port Mobile, and eventually it spread throughout many states in the United States. But it first showed up in Alabama, and then early in the 1940s, he was the one who really discovered it, and he became an authority in this. So the point is that when you are someone who goes through and endures some sort of suffering, some sort of ordeal, like Ed Wilson did, to see that ultimately that there is purpose in that, right? That's great joy. That it's not just meaningless. Pain is not just for no reason, right? And all the things that we go through. So what he's saying is now that if you can now find in the Bria, in everything in the world, all events, all creatures, all miraculous occurrences in nature, if you could peel back the layers and find God's workings, hashgacha pratis, if you find that, then ultimately you'll be filled with that ha'ara, and you'll sing nothing but the praises of God at that moment. Hare mikol hanivrayim, mi hu motzi rishon hare miyad motzi sham atzmo. So the idea in he says that when you investigate the Bria of the world, who is it you discover first? What's the first thing you see when you start to contemplate the world of God? So most people, the first thing they discover is themselves, right? First person we see when we wake up and we look in the mirror is ourselves. The first person's emotions and physical state and mental state that we're aware of when we wake up in the morning is our own, right? And usually I'm aware of a foot that's in my head because one of my kids is sleeping like sort of sideways on my bed just to make me uncomfortable. But the second thing I'm aware of when I wake up is usually, well, how am I feeling? What am I thinking, right? What do I have to do today, right? What time is it? I want to be aware of my space in the world, my time, my reality, and that sense of self-consciousness, that awareness of self. He says, if you could put that investigation of self, that awareness, that knowledge of self in the context of trying to understand the Kadosh Baruch Hu's Bria, because I'm the closest to myself. And if I contemplate that existence of myself, in truth, what am I going to think about myself? Wow, I really need help. Not just in a sort of in a rhetoric sense. I really need help. I can't do any of this without it. Even getting out of bed in the morning, I don't even know if I could do that. Right? Think about the times when you have I don't know, some back pain or you're not feeling well. So right, you can't get yourself out of bed. So that idea is that you need God's help to do even the simplest thing, to function as a self-contained entity. So that awareness of self brings you to realize utter reliance upon God. When you understand that, and then what you understand is that you'll contemplate all of your requests, right, and the limited capacity that you have, because vis-a-vis the existence of truth. And that is the truth that is missing. That is missing from everyone's sense of reality. So what he's saying is that when a person goes on a search for meaning, right, or to understand God's world, the first thing that you encounter is yourself. And right away, as you think about who you are, where you stand, what you need, immediately, if you're a healthy person, you should be aware that you're missing, that you're not so powerful, that you don't have all the wherewithal that you need, right? You don't have whether the finances, or you don't have the energy, you don't have the decision-making ability. Maybe you don't have the health, the other things that are needed to function as you'd like. So that awareness of self should immediately make you conscious of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge and that he is the one that you need to appeal to. And as you look for truth, as you try to investigate your own reality, you think about yourself further. Then you start to think about the wonderful good things that he's done with you. But I am pretty lucky. I got this family and I got this. And hey, look, I had a bed to sleep on at night and I have a roof over my head. And you don't just think about the moment that you're now, but rather from the day you were born to the day you are right now. Even if right now you're going through a particularly rough patch in life, the larger picture, there are a lot of chasadim, a lot of kindnesses have been bestowed upon me throughout my existence. B'kiyum chiyoto, parnasaso, the fact that I had maybe a good job, right? Or different pleasures, or maybe yesterday I ate a donut and I enjoyed it. I don't know, something that gave you some sort of simcha. And then you could get up and at least acknowledge, praise the truth. That I don't have anything without him. So again, the notion that awareness, that search for truth, is what brings you to recognition, cognition of God's existence, of man's reliance upon God, whether it's in that which you are missing or whether it's an appreciation of the things that you do have. Are you guys seeing all my WhatsApp things flashing on the screen? Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't even know how to get rid of them. Okay, let's hope nobody sends something embarrassing. Okay. Betimsa, she zochrein, it's the problem with technology today. Betimsa.
I can't see anything, so I don't know if anyone else does.
Maybe they're not flashing by the screen. Betimsa she zochreinu kan shloshet chelkei tefila haikrai. That we find that here three main components of tefillah that are encompassed in this notion that we've just built up until now. What are they? Sidur shivcho shel makom, the organization, the praise of God, right? Shevach. Bakashas rachamim al tzrachav, request for mercy. Vehoda'ah al chelko. Think about what we do in Shemona Esrei. We spend the first three brachos assembling Shevach, praise of God. First three blessings are about Shevach. You have the Avot, right? Zechut Avot, the merit of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Then you have the might of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And then you have the holiness of God's name. That's all in the realm of praise, Shevach. Then we spend, out of the 19 blessings, right? 6 of them. The last three are going to be Hoda'ah, Modim, thanking God for answering our prayers. But really, of those 19, because we have 18 plus 1, that was added later, so you're going to have the middle 13 are all going to be bakashos, requests. What do I need? What am I missing? Right? What does the world need? So bechulam portzim imela, and then all of a sudden it bursts out. It opens up on its own. For the regular chayot lahagish rega shel emet hamitah. So he's suggesting that tefillah is a natural outgrowth that comes forth when you spend a moment contemplating just the truth of your existence. If you think about it for a moment, before you open up your mouth in prayer, just close your eyes for a moment and think. We're not talking about the Hasidim Rishonim where you need to spend an hour, but think about it for a single moment. Where are you in the world? Right? What are you grateful for? What is it you need and don't have? Right? What is it what are you feeling right now? You breathe in and you sense that you're alive and breath is coming into your lungs and then coming out and you're able to, and blood is pumping through your veins. And that notion that you could move, that you could open your eyes, you could hear things, you could sense. That awareness of reality is a judgment of truth, and it brings you to recognize God. Zohi metzius hatefila. That is, and that's how important it is to meditate before prayer, to spend a moment and do that, right? Not to walk into tefillah mitoch schok, as the Chazal say, not from laughter, not from a place of kalas rosh, of lightheadedness, or sometimes you hear like a loud cackle, and then someone gives a clap on the beginning and they start to daven. You don't start davening from a place of just like, just an irrelevant conversation. We cannot begin to talk to God unless we first become aware of our reality. That's one of the reasons I love the Yishai Ribos song where it does the Seder HaAvoda, stunning song, is that he puts the Avoda of the Kohen Gadol in the context of first awareness of sins, right? The counting, everyone familiar with that song? Yachat v'yachat, the 1 and 1, Achat v'shtayim, Achat v'shalosh, right? The sprinkling of the blood of the Kohen Gadol. But first it describes Achat v'yachat, one of the, I'll find the Seder Avoda lyrics. They're really phenomenal. Here we go. So in the lyrics, he talks about the Kohen Gadol sprinkling the blood, 1 and 2 and 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. And it starts out that each of those sprinklings, the 7 things, are awarenesses of sin, right? And he throws in, says you're going to be mityaesh. You'll give up and you realize you've sinned, and you can't carry the burden and the bitterness of the mistakes you made and the embarrassment and the shortcomings and transgressions. And then as he goes on in the song, the next time around, 2 times around, he talks about achad ve'achat, that the Kohen Gadol is sprinkling on Yom Kippur, and he says, then you're suddenly going to be aware, achat me'elef alfei alafim. You're going to realize 1 in thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands, myriads, ribei rivavot, nisim niflaot, miracles and wonders, asita imanu, that you did with us, yamim v'leilot, day and night. It's amazing, but it really encapsulates this concept that thinking about where you are and where you stand in the world, in time, in family, in reality, will make you aware of shortcomings, and it makes you aware of appreciations, things that you've achieved also, right? That's the reason why Rav Soloveitchik wrote famously that before Yom Noraim, we read about the Vidoy Meiser, the confession that's to take place when you bring the Bikurim, and it's called a confession. And if you read a confession in the Torah, it says, I confess to God that I've done everything he asked of me. It's not much of a confession. I must confess, I'm quite a tzaddik. I must confess, I really did a good job, God. So the Rav points out, why is it that the confession we make, Vidoy Meiser, is an admission of all the wonderful things you've done? Because sometimes we have to recognize good things that happen to us also. It's not just about recognizing bad things that have happened, but also recognize good things. The Shevach V'odah, that's praise, thanksgiving. So he continues here. That is what prayer is about. Tarata, in its purity, lishpot mishpat emes, to make a real judgment. With orer hargish and baraka and met, to feel that bolt of truth, that lightning bolt of truth, right? Masha poretz mitoch libo, which is bursting forth from your heart. Behechrich, you have no choice but to recognize when you have no choice but to recognize truth in your life. Give me 1 second to see where this takes us. Okay, I think we could do Gimel. We have a few more minutes to do Gimel here, and we'll stop on after the Gimel note. All right, just pause. Any questions, any comments before we go on?
Rabbi, where are we in the English version?
I need to ask forgiveness. I don't know, because I don't have that in front of me, because I'm kind of stuck at home. We are in the chapter called Pilul.
Yes, right. I'm absolutely there. I'm just trying to.
And we should be about to be starting a new section. The third section of the sections in there. There's Gimel, the third section, and I should say he's talking about recognizing the truth. It's the third major chapter section, right? In that chapter on Pilul.
Okay.
And it seems like he's talking about cutting wood to make a table.
Okay, I'll have to read through the whole section and
okay.
Sort of
now you should just close your eyes and become aware of the voices that are being spoken, and then afterwards you will. Okay, there's another topic. Anyone who's a thinking person, anyone who's cognitive, that to understand the existence of something, right? If I ask you to describe to me, right, a water bottle, so you'll start to describe maybe what it looks like, what it contains, what it feels like. It's cold, right? It has a little cap on top. It's much thinner than it used to be because they're using far less plastic now, right? You'll describe its physical form. So if you want to understand something's existence, its physical form is very important. Surato, its shape, maybe. Velo chumrioto. Not necessarily its essence, but its shape. Kigonim tatzvial shulchan matishal At Chaver Chamaza, if you walked up to a table and someone's never seen a table, they came from another planet. They said, "What is this?" I always say, if people came from another planet and they came to our shuls, right, and they wanted to know what in the world is going on here. For that matter, if Moshe Rabbeinu was to come forward in history and was to look at Judaism the way it is today, I think it'd be very difficult to describe what exactly they're seeing. The anthropologists who come from another planet and describe little Jewish children running around the house of worship, that somehow the children, when they're young, they have these little sticks that stick out of their mouth. And then when they get older, those sticks stop existing. They'll be observing lollipops in their mouths, and they'll think that this is somehow like part of the human species. So when you look at something that you've never seen before, you ask your friend, "What is this you see in front of your eyes?" You look at a table. He's not going to say it's a piece of wood. I have to pause for 1 second. I have something at the house. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Okay, so he says, so everyone back, I apologize. So if you look at a piece of wood, you look at a table, when you ask someone, "What do you see in front of you?" they'll say to you, "Well, I see a table," right? "I see a shulchan." They're not going to say, "Well, I see a piece of wood," right? Or "I see a rectangle." They're going to describe it as a table. It's function. They're not going to describe what they see. At But if an animal was to see a table and you say, "Well, what do you see?" an animal would think, "Well, it's just a pile of wood with 4 sticks in each corner." So everyone when man sees something, man contemplates its purpose, its function in the world. Od mashal imtira mechonit. If you see a car, you wouldn't just see it as some sort of colorful item. Even though you would see something big and blue, right, or gray. Even an animal gets a little beneath the color. They see the metal on the car. Even though the metal of the car is hidden behind paint, at least the animal will see it, will observe it as a hard metal, right? And it goes further. Aval ha'adam kevan shiodea sheyesh ba manua v'kocha lanua linsoa. And when a person knows that there's something preventing you from traveling, or allows you to move to and from one location, to go from your house to the store, to travel to your children's home. So when a person can see their ability, they have to see a function, right? They see much more than just a physical object in front of them. So before we go on, I am going to stop here because I have someone who has to be at my house. I just want to summarize this concept. When we become aware of things, the way the human mind contemplates it is that we see function. We don't see form in front of us, right? It could be that architects are trained to show you function, right? Form. Architects are really into the imagery of something. But when human beings contemplate something, we see its function. What does it do, right? You don't see car as a big chunk of metal. You see it as something that takes you from one location to another. You see a table as something where you put your food on it, you sit down at it, and you gather around, convenes family together. It has all sorts of meaning to you. Whereas the anthropologist or the animal, for that matter, who studies something will only see it in the terms of its form. And so with that, we begin to understand our awareness of things as we begin to search for truth and search for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am going to stop here. I apologize, but I'm looking forward next week, at least in some form, to be live, maybe at the shul, as we continue with this sefer.